Thank you so much for joining us again. This is Bobby and JJ Radio. Today we're talking with Irene Morgan, the loan guru. She's going to talk about refinancing. A lot of people wonder if this is a good option. Irene's going to tell us all of her, or at least share some of her knowledge. She's been in the business for 30 years. She's helped over 208 families just last year alone. She has a great service of 3 that takes care of all of their potential clients. Now, Irene, is refinancing for everyone, or should everyone be refinancing, you think?
Well, not necessarily. Refinancing is really not for everybody, especially after the past couple of years. Interest rates went down into the 3s.
Oh, yeah.
We're now back up into the 4s. But if you're dropping 1 to 2% of whatever your loan interest rate is at the current time,
Right.
that makes it more beneficial.
It makes more sense.
Also, if your house has a better value, and you may have gotten an FHA loan or something like that, then you can refinance without dropping that much and probably drop $100 or $200 a month in your payment.
And the payments, what they got to really focus on too, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Irene, can you tell us a little bit how refinancing works, and is there any closing costs involved in getting a refinance?
Sure. The loans that you currently have, when you're refinancing, a lot of people think that the balance they owe on the loan is what they're refinancing. When the truth is, you always have like another 30 days interest on that. And then you have whatever you have on your loan, plus normally all your closing costs. Mm-hmm. You rolled all those back into your loan. And depending on how much you can refinance, depends on what your appraisal comes in at on your home.
So they're going to be looking at the value in order to absolve some of those costs.
That's the big button. You know, it depends on what your house appraises for before you even know how much you can refinance.
So it's very confusing to some buyers. Sorry about, but they say, a lot of people say that there's no upfront fees, there's no closing costs. What does that all mean when people get those letters in the mail like I do all the time?
Well, there's always those lenders that come out and say there's no upfront fees.
Right.
And no upfront fees truly means you don't pay any cash out of your pocket.
But you're still paying it one way or the other, right?
So they're lying.
Not necessarily.
No. There is several ways of this happening and being no upfront fees.
Okay.
One is they can premium price a loan, which means you pay a little higher interest rate. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is you roll the closing cost into your loan. Now, people who say there's no fees, they're really not lying. They usually mean there's no mortgage company fees.
Yeah. So, but they're kind of stealing from Paul to pay Peter, right? So just to explain this to anyone that's listening, so either you're going to not pay any money out of pocket, but that necessarily doesn't mean that the actual transaction didn't cost you something. So, if you were able to get an interest rate, it might go up 1/4 of a point in order to cover the fees to do the transaction, or like you were saying, you can actually, if the appraisal comes in high enough, there's enough spread, or like you said, equity, to cover the fees that were going to supposed to come out of your pocket.
Correct.
So you could have got a 4% interest rate if you paid your own closing costs. If you want them to pay your closing costs, you maybe go up to 4 1/4.
Well,
or more.
Or more.
Because what they are saying is that their fees would be covered.
Right.
Now, there's also title company fees.
Right.
And there's always a title policy. In the state of Texas, we haven't allowed them to not have a title policy. Depends on how long they own the house as to how much the title policy is. But then a survey, you can use an old survey unless you've added anything on. There's recording fees, there's appraisal, there's all these third-party fees that they can't just waive.
Yeah, they're not controllable. They just don't go away. Something happens with them.
So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Bobby and JJ Radio. We're sitting with Irene Morgan, best loan officer in San Antonio by far, easily.
I think so.
Thank
and
you.
We're talking about refinancing, pros and cons, and who can get refinancing done. But can you just tell us what kind of loans can be refinanced? Can all loans be refinanced?
Pretty much. If you currently have a VA loan, then you can refinance back into a VA loan. If you have a USDA loan, you can refinance back into another USDA loan. Now, if you have a VA loan, but in the meantime, you got divorced, or if your spouse died and you're not the veteran, then no, you cannot refinance back into that VA loan.
You would still need the benefits of being a veteran.
You would have to have the benefits. And even though you right now have a VA loan, you can't refinance into that if you're not a veteran.
And what about credit? Is it the same, things that they're looking at when you're getting a regular purchasing loan that you're looking at as far as credit and income and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, a lot of people think because they're refinancing and they own the loan and they already have been making payments on it and they're not late, they should be able to refinance. But we have to look at the whole package. We have to run their credit report and we have to see that they have not been late. And they cannot be late on that mortgage more than once in the last 12 months for a government loan and not at all for a conventional loan.
Now, you're saying that all type of loans can be refinanced, but sometimes it's a good idea to change it from like a primary FHA loan and then make it a conventional loan sometimes. Is that correct?
If your house can appraise for enough, again, it goes back to the fact that the appraisal is very, very, very important.
Right.
But if your house can appraise for enough, 100% of the time, if you get at least a 95% loan to value rolling in your closing cost, it will always benefit you to go conventional because FHA has really upped what's called their mortgage insurance premium.
Sure.
And it's very high, where conventional is not. So you could actually not be changing your interest rate, but maybe 0.5% and be saving yourself $100-200 a month if you could go from an FHA loan to a conventional loan.
So if you're just joining us with this Bobby and JJ Radio, we're talking with the mortgage guru, Irene Morgan with SWBC Mortgage. She's breaking down all the pros and cons and do's and don'ts and what to do as far as refinancing goes. Now, what were you just saying, just to kind of break it down a little bit more layman, is that so someone could have an FHA loan currently right now. They could have been paying on it for the last 5-7 years. And as long as you said they had like a 95 LTV, that means loan to value. So just to use round numbers, if the loan is at 100,000, they have to be at 95,000 as far as space or equity in between to do the loan. And also, it may not save them so much in interest as far as on paper, but it could actually bring down their entire mortgage, which is their monthly obligation, $100 to $200, which in the end is the most important to a family because that's what they're paying every single month. It doesn't, in the end, sales price and interest rates, I mean, they matter in the long run. But in the long run, I mean, for the day-to-day, it's what they pay every month that they could be saving on.
Absolutely. And let me try to put it a different way.
Sure.
People don't really understand what MIP or PMI is.
Right.
But it's the mortgage insurance you put for putting a lower down payment. So when you're refinancing off of an FHA loan that allowed you to get in for only 3.5% down, but now you have equity of about 5% or more,
right?
You could drop not just 20 or 50, which would have been what you got in the beginning,
sure,
but $100 or $200 from your payment, depending on how much you owe on it, for having switched to a conventional loan.
I was explaining PMI to my uncle. He's 60. He hasn't bought a house in over 4 decades. And I was trying to explain PMI to him. I said, so they pretty much, the bank is taking out an insurance policy on your loan, and they're making you pay it every month. And he was like flabbergasted. He was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I go, yeah.
Why would anybody do that?
Yeah, like who would pay that? I go, almost every American that gets every American that gets an FHA loan. Yeah.
So Irene, what if I'm planning on buying a home in the next couple of years? Do you think refinance would be a good idea for me now?
Well, there's several things that can, and I always say that at 2 years, if you're going to sell it in less than 2 years, probably not. Mm-hmm. Unless there's a reason for you refinance. One of the things that we haven't really touched on was a cash out refinance. If you are pulling cash out of your house to pay off debt, and you're going to save yourself way more than you're going to be spending by paying off
interest,
high interest
sure,
charge cards and such, then yes, it would be. Now, there's another reason. Even if you wanted to sell it in the next couple of years and maybe you're getting a divorce and they've said that you have to sell it, then you either sell it then or stay in it and refinance. That's your obligation. But normally, if you're going to be under normal circumstances and you're going to sell your house in less than 2 years, I always tell people not to refinance.
Yeah, me and Bobby go to a lot of listing appointments, and they say, oh, we just refinanced like in October, and they're selling in March. And I said, well, and then they wonder, well, why they're not making as much money as they would have before. And I said, well, it's just, and none of us are Nostradamus. We don't know. Well, yeah, maybe you are. Yeah, you can't even predict which team to bet on. But anyways.
Can you say it?
Yeah.
What, Nostradamus?
No, you can say it. He can't spell it. No,
I can spell it?
I'll bet on that. No.
How much?
So,
right.
but we'll go to these list appointments, and they're concerned because they're not making as much money as they would have been. But it's just because they didn't foresee them having to move. But if they're looking to expand their family, the family's getting bigger, kids are growing up, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons before you pull the trigger on a refinance.
Absolutely.
So, and also, what are some of the other reasons that you touched on divorce? You would have to refinance or sell a house at that point. A lot of people, they've freed up what they call freeing up their VA or something like that, knowing that they're going to purchase a home in the near future. Have you ever seen something like that? Or they've refinanced the property as an investment loan because they're going to go and change to a primary loan. Have you seen that with some of your clients?
And that causes an issue. You usually do it at the same time you're going to do a primary home.
Right.
Because you can't really do an investment property you're living in.
Right.
There's homestead rules. But, yeah,
sure.
one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people would refinance their home, besides the fact of paying off debt,
right,
besides the fact if they're divorced, is some people, if they're going to live in it next in 2 years, unless they're going to keep it as investment property,
right,
it doesn't make sense.
I got you.
So what if somebody has no equity in their home? Can they still refinance?
No.
You have to have equity.
Well, you could if you have a VA loan or a USDA loan, but besides that, you absolutely have to have equity.
And in that situation, it's when I say I did get a refi, would I get another 30-year loan, or is that you get to pick and choose if I can get a 15-year note or not?
You can pick and choose. If it's a conventional loan, you could actually do a 29-year, a 28-year, or 27-year. We can do it. But a VA, FHA, or USDA, it has to be a 30, a 15-year, or a 10-year loan.
So they don't have to press the reset button on the loan again. Like, there's options that, because I think a lot of people are scared that they've been paying into their home for, 10 years, and they say, well, they don't want to reset the button and start another 30 years. But there are different options that have lower, lower actual lives of the loan for them.
Absolutely. If someone's going to stay in their house more than 2 years, and one of the most loans that I'm refinancing at this current time is more people my age that are
35?
wanting to
35, 40?
37?
or more, and that are thinking of that their old age. And that they don't want to have a mortgage. So they want to get a 10 or a 15-year loan. Maybe the interest rate's not going to save them money. Maybe they're going to have higher payments. But they haven't been able to pay towards the equity like they thought they would.
Right.
But if they get a 10 or a 15-year loan and they know that this is their payment, they will make that payment, and then it'll be paid off in the time frame that they want it to be paid off with.
It's like running a marathon. They know there's a finish line, and they're just going towards just knocking it out in 10 or 15 years instead of waiting,
Correct.
Almost half a lifetime or a third of a lifetime or however you want to see it.
And the other really big one is, like I said before, cashing out. People are trying to pay off debt. And maybe they just know matter how hard they tried, they cannot pay off that debt. And they can use that equity from their home, and they immediately lower their payments because interests are so much higher, and they're saving $500-$600 paying off $10,000, $20,000 in debt.
Yeah, so that's another thing. And you sit down, you counsel everyone when you're talking to them about this option of refinance. You always sit down and say, well, I know that you literally look at, you're almost like an armchair financial planner, and
I am a certified mortgage planner.
I know you are, but I just want you to shamelessly plug yourself on your own. But, but you do sit down with every family, and when you're looking at the type of loan that they have now, how many years they have left, what their interest rate is now, what how much more they have to pay it off, what their payments are, and you sit down with them and you custom make a plan for them. And sometimes you tell them this refinance is not for you right now. Sometimes you tell them that it is, but you definitely help every single family that goes into your office, and that's why we always refer you to all of our clients.
And if it's not worth their while, I'm one of the only people that will actually say,
get out of my office.
Beat it.
Well, no, I don't. It's not worth your while.
Sure.
Do not let someone else talk you into this.
So if anyone is out
Save
there,
yourself money.
Absolutely. If anyone's out there looking to refinance or get some more information or get a custom tailored information from Irene Morgan, they can text REFI, R-E-F-I, to 210-771-0139. Again, that's R-E-F-I to 210-771-0139. Irene Morgan works with South SWBC Mortgage. Her NMLS number is 218881. That's Irene Morgan. Don't move it in. Listen to Bobby and JJ Radio.